What if the most shocking move of the NFL offseason isn't a trade or a draft pick, but a quiet plan coming together behind closed doors? Because right now, there's growing buzz around the Cleveland Browns, and it points to a scenario almost no one expected to take seriously. Imagine this: a Super Bowl winning coach, fresh off a stunning exit, crossing division lines to fix the one franchise that's never been able to fix itself. Not out of spite, not for headlines, but to finish a job he believes he was never allowed to start. That coach is John Harbaugh, and the quarterback at the center of this rumored master plan is Shadda Sanders. According to reports and league chatter, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam is watching this moment closely. The timing alone has people talking. Cleveland moves on from its head coach. Then, almost immediately, the Baltimore Ravens part ways with Harbaugh, one day apart. In the NFL, coincidences like that tend to raise eyebrows. This isn't being framed as a rebuild for the sake of rebuilding. Rumors suggest it's about alignment, coach, quarterback, and control, something Harbaugh may not have fully had in Baltimore. And if what insiders are hinting at is even partially true, this isn't just a coaching search. It's a calculated swing at finally ending decades of quarterback misery in Cleveland. Nothing is official, nothing is confirmed, but the pieces are close enough that people around the league are starting to connect the dots. And if those dots do connect, the AFC North may never look the same again. In the NFL, timing is rarely accidental. Moves are calculated, conversations happen weeks in advance, and when decisions finally go public, they're usually the last step of a much longer process. That's why the sequence of events involving the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens immediately set off alarms around the league. Cleveland fires its head coach. Then, just one day later, Baltimore parts ways with John Harbaugh. One day. For two AFC North rivals with decades of shared history and bad blood, that kind of alignment doesn't just happen without people noticing. Around league circles, the reaction wasn't shock. It was curiosity. The kind that comes when executives start asking quiet questions instead of making loud statements. People close to the situation have hinted that these weren't isolated decisions made in a vacuum. Rumors suggest that Harbaugh's availability had been anticipated, at least internally, before it became public. And if that's true, it would explain why Cleveland moved with such confidence, clearing the deck at exactly the right moment. No panic, no scrambling, just space. What makes this timing even more interesting is who benefits from it. The Browns suddenly have flexibility. Baltimore closes a chapter. And Harbaugh, a coach who's spent his entire career in one place, finds himself free at the exact moment a division rival is searching for direction. That's not just dramatic, it's strategic. Of course, none of this has been confirmed publicly. NFL front offices don't announce their intentions until contracts are signed. But insiders keep circling back to the same point. If Cleveland wanted to make a bold move, this was the window. And windows like this don't stay open long. The league is full of coaches looking for second acts, but not many come with Harbaugh's resume, his credibility, and his experience developing a franchise quarterback into an MVP. When someone like that becomes available, owners don't wait around to see what happens next. They position themselves early. And that's why the timing matters so much. Because before you even get into motives, philosophies, or quarterback plans, the calendar itself is telling a story. One that suggests this offseason wasn't just chaotic, it was coordinated. And once you start looking at it that way, the next question becomes unavoidable. Why was Harbaugh ready to leave Baltimore in the first place? From the outside, it looked unthinkable. John Harbaugh had been the face of the Baltimore Ravens for well over a decade. Super Bowl ring, consistent playoff appearances, a reputation as one of the league's most stable leaders. Coaches with that resume don't just get shown the door overnight. But inside the building, reports claim the relationship had been straining for a while. The final stretch of the season didn't create the problems, it exposed them. The loss to Pittsburgh wasn't just painful because of the score, it was the way it unfolded, missed opportunities, tight moments, and according to league whispers, growing disagreements on how the offense should be handled when the stakes were highest. Nothing explosive, Nothing public, just friction that had been quietly building over time. A lot of that tension centered around control. Harbaugh has always been a coach who believes in shaping the entire operation, not just managing Sundays. And while he helped develop Lamar Jackson into an MVP, the partnership wasn't without its challenges. As Lamar matured and the offense evolved, sources suggest there were differing visions about how aggressive to be, how much risk to tolerate, and how the next phase of the roster should look. That kind of disagreement doesn't mean failure, it means a cycle may be ending. Front offices hate uncertainty more than anything. When they sense a coach's vision no longer fully aligns with long-term planning, especially at quarterback, decisions accelerate fast, and the speed of Baltimore's move caught people's attention for a reason. This didn't feel like an emotional reaction to one loss. It felt like a conclusion that had already been reached. Harbaugh's public comments around that time only added fuel to the speculation. When asked about personnel decisions, draft philosophy, and player acquisition, he repeatedly emphasized that those calls weren't his to make. On the surface, that's normal, but to people who know how coaches communicate, it sounded like distance, like someone drawing a line between what he wanted and what he was allowed to do. That's not how empowered coaches talk. By the time the season ended, the sense around the league was that Baltimore and Harbaugh had reached the same realization from different directions. The partnership had run its course, not because it failed, but because both sides were ready for something new. And once that door opened, it created a ripple effect. Because if Harbaugh was willing to walk away from everything he built in Baltimore, it meant there was something specific he believed in next, something worth starting over for. And that's where the quarterback conversation starts to matter a lot more. This is where the story takes a turn from frustration to motive. According to league chatter and reports from people familiar with the situation, the biggest fracture between John Harbaugh and the Ravens didn't happen on game day. It happened months earlier, during draft season. Rumors suggest Harbaugh had his eye on Shedeur Sanders long before draft night arrived. Not as a gimmick pick, not as a headline grabber, but as a quarterback he believed he could develop the same way he once developed Lamar Jackson, by building belief early and shaping the offense around strengths instead of forcing a fit. Inside Baltimore, that idea didn't land the same way. The Ravens front office, according to reports, wasn't interested in reopening the quarterback conversation. They already had their guy. Drafting another quarterback, especially one with Shedeur's profile, risked creating questions they didn't want to answer. So the brakes were applied. First round, off the table. Second round, not happening. By the time later rounds came into play, the opportunity had passed. That's where things reportedly got tense. There's been buzz that Harbaugh even reached out to Day and Sanders during that process to gauge interest and fit. Nothing official, nothing confirmed, just exploratory conversations, the kind coaches make when they see something special and don't want to let it slip away. But the response, from what's been said, was clear. Shedeur wasn't interested in being a long-term backup. He wanted a real path, a real opportunity, not a waiting room. And honestly, that shouldn't surprise anyone. From Harbaugh's perspective, this wasn't just about adding depth. It was about the future. He saw a quarterback with leadership, poise, and the mental makeup to handle pressure, someone who could eventually take over, not disrupt. But when that vision was shut down, it sent a message, one that coaches feel deeply. Because when a head coach identifies his next quarterback and gets overruled, it changes the relationship. It introduces limits. And limits are hard for elite coaches to live with, especially ones who believe quarterback development is their strongest skill. Publicly, Harbaugh played it cool. He reiterated that personnel decisions weren't his call, but to people listening closely, that tone sounded different, less invested, more detached, like someone who realized his influence had a ceiling. And once a coach reaches that realization, the countdown usually starts. Because if you can't build the future the way you see it, the next best option is to find somewhere you can. This is where the story shifts from frustration to opportunity, because while things were quietly unraveling in Baltimore, someone else was paying very close attention. Jimmy Haslam has never been accused of being passive, and when a rare opening appears in the NFL, he tends to move fast. From Haslam's perspective, the situation couldn't have lined up more cleanly. The Cleveland Browns were once again at a crossroads. Another head coach gone, another reset looming, another offseason where the franchise had to decide whether to keep patching holes or finally swing for something transformative. And then suddenly, a Super Bowl winning coach with deep quarterback development credibility becomes available. Reports and league buzz suggest Haslam didn't hesitate. According to insiders, outreach to John Harbaugh's camp happened quickly, possibly within hours of Baltimore's decision. Nothing flashy, nothing public, just a direct conversation centered around alignment, control, and vision. The pitch, as it's being described, was simple but powerful. Come to Cleveland and you won't be boxed in. Unlike Baltimore, where personnel decisions were tightly managed, Cleveland could offer Harbaugh something he hadn't fully had in years. A blank canvas at quarterback, real influence over development, and most importantly, a chance to work with a quarterback he reportedly believed in from the start, Shedeur Sanders. This is where speculation really heats up. Rumors suggest Haslam's willingness to draft Shedeur isn't just theoretical. It's part of the appeal, the idea that Harbaugh wouldn't just be hired to stabilize the franchise, but to shape its future under center. That kind of promise changes everything for a coach who felt his vision was capped elsewhere. For Haslam, this would be the boldest bet of his ownership tenure. Pairing a recently fired coach with a rookie quarterback is not a safe play. It's a conviction play, one that says the past hasn't worked and incremental change isn't enough anymore. And that's what makes this moment so fascinating. Cleveland isn't chasing hype, it's chasing alignment. If Haslam truly believes Harbaugh plus the right quarterback can finally end decades of instability, then this isn't desperation, it's strategy. The question now is whether the idea makes sense. It's whether both sides are willing to take the risk together. Because if they are, this stops being rumor and starts becoming one of the most aggressive pivots the Browns have ever attempted. On the surface, the idea sounds dramatic. A fired coach, a rookie quarterback, a franchise that's been burned more times than it can count. But when you strip away the noise and look at the football logic, the pairing starts to feel a lot less reckless and a lot more intentional. John Harbaugh has already proven the most important thing a coach can prove in today's NFL. He can build an offense around a quarterback instead of forcing a quarterback into an offense. When Baltimore drafted Lamar Jackson, half the league didn't know what to do with him. Harbaugh didn't hesitate. He reshaped the system, protected Lamar early, leaned into his strengths, and let confidence grow before pressure followed. The result was an MVP and one of the most efficient offenses in football. That track record matters. Now look at Shedeur Sanders. He's not Lamar. The skill sets are different. Shedeur is more comfortable operating from the pocket, processing quickly, and attacking defenses with timing and accuracy. But that's exactly why this pairing is intriguing. Harbaugh isn't married to one style. He's married to efficiency. He builds around what works. What also stands out is Shedeur's makeup. He's been around professional expectations his entire life. He understands preparation, he understands scrutiny, and he understands that being the guy isn't about volume, it's about control. Those traits align with how Harbaugh prefers his quarterbacks to operate: calm, accountable, and unflinching when things get messy. From a Browns perspective, this would be a clean reset, not another patch, not another half measure. A coach with credibility and autonomy paired with a quarterback he believes in from day one. No mixed messages, no development limbo, just a clear plan with a clear leader on both sides. And for Harbaugh, this is about legacy as much as opportunity. If he succeeds in Cleveland with a quarterback he helped select and develop from scratch, it validates his philosophy beyond Baltimore. It proves his success wasn't situational, it was foundational. Of course, none of this guarantees wins. Nothing does in the NFL. But alignment gives you a fighting chance, and that's what Cleveland has lacked more than talent. This wouldn't be about fixing the Browns overnight. It would be about finally building something that doesn't collapse under its own weight. And when you look at it through that lens, the risk starts to look a lot more like a calculated bet. The only question left is whether Cleveland is ready to stop hedging and commit fully to the swing. This is where everything stops feeling accidental and starts looking deliberate. Because whatever you think about Jimmy Haslam as an owner, one thing has always been true about him. When he sees a rare opportunity, he doesn't wait for consensus. He moves. Haslam knows the reality in Cleveland better than anyone. The Cleveland Browns have tried patience. They've tried stability. They've tried incremental fixes and safe hires. And none of it has solved the core problem. Quarterback instability keeps resetting the timeline, and every reset costs years. From Haslam's perspective, doing the same thing again would be the real risk. That's why the idea of John Harbaugh landing in Cleveland isn't just bold, it's strategic. Coaches like Harbaugh don't hit the market often. When they do, owners don't get cute. They act. Reports and league buzz suggest Haslam recognized immediately that this wasn't just a coaching vacancy. It was a chance to realign the entire franchise around one vision. And the pitch, as it's being described, cuts straight to the heart of what frustrated Harbaugh in Baltimore: control, clarity, commitment, not just to winning now, but to shaping the future at quarterback. The message was, come stabilize us. It was, come build this with us. That's a massive distinction. Unlike Baltimore, where roster decisions were carefully filtered through layers of management, Cleveland can offer something different: a cleaner power structure, a clearer lane, and according to speculation, a willingness to let Harbaugh have real influence over the most important position in the sport, including the chance to draft and develop Shador Sanders. For Haslam, this would be the most aggressive bet of his ownership tenure. Pairing a coach who just got fired with a rookie quarterback isn't a conservative move. It's a conviction move, one that says the past doesn't matter if the alignment is right, one that accepts short-term criticism in exchange for long-term direction. And that's the key word here: direction. Cleveland hasn't lacked talent, it's lacked alignment. Different coaches, different quarterbacks, different timelines colliding at the same time. This power play is Haslam's attempt to stop that cycle by anchoring everything to one philosophy, one coach, and one quarterback path. If it fails, it's a spectacular failure. There's no hiding from it. But if it works, Haslam doesn't just change the Browns' future, he rewrites his own legacy as an owner. And that's why this move feels real. Because owners don't make plays like this unless they believe the upside is worth the heat. And right now, Jimmy Haslam looks ready to take it.